You set foot on foreign soil. Only this land isn't ruled by any country or government. In this land we celebrate music. In this land we celebrate games. In this land we celebrate those who compose video game music. Welcome to the VGMbassy. Welcome and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the VGMbassy. This is a show centered around video game music and the amazing online community of fans and podcasters that enjoy it. My name's Ed, and on each episode I'll take the role of Prime VGM Minister and invite a guest VG Ambassador onto the show to share with us their own video game music culture. Or I may share a part of my culture on a solo show. So before we get into today's business, I just have a little bit of small stuff to talk about at the top. So we are getting into year 2 of the VGMbassy, which means that if you were considering becoming a Patreon subscriber, this would be a great time to do so because I am resetting all of the Patreon rewards. And so those of you who are interested in submitting a blind listen track for me and a surprise guest to listen to, or you'd like to be on a show yourself with your own theme or culture to bring with you, you are absolutely welcome to join in. There's also at this point 11 episodes, maybe even 12 by the time this comes out, of Embassy exclusive that you will immediately get to listen to at the $3 tier or higher, plus all future Embassy exclusive episodes. So if you've been thinking about it, might be a cool idea. If not, no worries. We'll still continue to make awesome shows. Speaking of awesome shows, we have an awesome show today, returning for, I don't know, what, the third, fourth time?
You know what? I don't know. Just another episode. Let's get it over with. I got other stuff to do.
Fine, let's go home after this. Yeah. I've got Mr. Cameron Werme here. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How have you been?
I've been pretty good. Been VG ambassadoring it up with a lot of folks lately. We've got a lot of good shows on the horizon. We've got a really cool topic today. I think I don't know which one of us came up with this topic, but it might have been
I think like before I mentioned something that gave you an idea and it sort of became your idea. It sort of became your idea out of something I said. I don't remember exactly how it went. But.
Yeah, well, I think the last time you were here, or 2 times ago, you had just gotten your Switch, and you brought it over like 2 days after you got it. And you were talking about games to play, and I was mentioning a whole bunch of indie titles to you, and we were going back and forth, and then you messaged me like a couple weeks later, and you're like, I got this game and this game and this game, and you're awesome. And I was like, hey, I've been looking for somebody to do a Switch indie show with.
You know what it was specifically? I think in particular, it was One Strike. Because we had started talking, we'll get into it later, but that soundtrack has a little controversy involved, and some of the tracks are amazing. Some of the original ones, the non-original tracks are also great, but
the original tracks are great for a reason, which we'll talk about. Right. Yeah, so you haven't had a Switch for that long now, but you've been really enjoying it, right?
Oh yeah. To give you a little relevant backstory is I've never been particularly good at keeping up with video games and video game culture until fairly recently. I sort of missed an entire generation, which was not if you count the Wii. I kind of played a little bit of that, but I never played a PS3 game. I think the only Xbox game I ever played was Munch's Odyssey, which I loved, and that's the original Xbox. And I just kind of avoided Xbox completely Not out of any bitterness, really. I just kind of wasn't interested.
Kind of apathy towards it.
I still am very turned off by the backwards button layout.
That is a pain in the neck to get used to.
Yeah, and I just never. There's something about the Xbox never really appealed to me. I never saw, not to turn this into an Xbox episode, but I never saw anything that really piqued my interest in the Xbox. And like I said, I had the Wii. I stuck to the games I knew I loved. You know,
Right.
I was, like Metroid, my favorite franchise. I even like other M, but I never really got into it. Even on the eShop on the Wii, I never really dug in very deep. And then it really was the online Facebook community, and getting to know people and actually getting involved in the discussions and getting more into the news cycle of video games and stuff. And I was just really intrigued by the Switch, and I played it when Purnell brought his up for the one of the Retro World Expos a couple years ago, and I played a couple games on there, and it just felt good, looked good, and I was really intrigued by it, and pretty much made up my mind I was going to get one, even though I had been thinking about getting a PS4 for different reasons. But when Metroid Prime 4 was announced, I was basically decided, well, if I'm going to get a new system, it's clearly going to be that. But who knows if that's even going to be on the Switch at this point.
Yeah, but at least, it got a lot of people to at least take note of it. And, I mean, it was already popular to begin with, but now they've announced so many franchises on there that people have been pining for forever and ever, that it's really getting kind of mainstream acceptance even among the hardcore gamers now, which is cool. I got it because of Mario Odyssey. I thought that looked like an incredible game when they showed it, even before the Switch had come out, and that had always been my plan, to kind of like just hold off, let the library kind of build up, make sure that the system was as good as it looked to me. And Odyssey came out just before the holiday season, and Logan was super into, the Mushroom Kingdom and Mario and Yoshi and all of that. So I was like, all right, this will be cool. I'll get the system, I'll get Odyssey, and we'll have a great time playing together. Cool. And we did. So, and then there's just been more and more titles coming out that have been worth taking looks at. I love the ability to kind of take it on the go.
I love that too. Although I'm surprised to hear how many people don't utilize the Switch in that way.
Like I wasn't for a long, long time.
I know people who never play the handheld mode, and I know people who never plug it into the TV. They play it one or the other, but it's so useful to use them in both. In both modes.
And it shows you can use it any way you want. So for the most part, if I'm playing like a AAA title or whatever, I'll sit down here and I'll plug it into the TV and I'll play it. If I want to play something simple, like a lot of these indie titles that we're talking about, or like having all the Neo Geo games available on it is amazing, because it's been so nice. It's like, the heart of springtime right now. So like even earlier today, I was out on my front porch. I'm going through the whole 15-game season of Baseball Stars 2 for the Neo Geo.
Nice.
Just sitting out there, and it's just a nice casual game, you can play. And then I'll play a full game, and then I'll maybe, try out some other indie titles that I haven't before, and just sit and play and have some fun. And it's a lot nicer to just get some sunlight and some breeze instead of just sitting in my basement the whole time. So it really does speak to even just changing the location of where you can play it gives you a whole different perspective on the system. It just makes you feel like you have more freedom to do what you want when you want. So they definitely knew what they were doing when they came up with this design.
I agree. I'm also relatively new to the online game shop thing. I have a 2DS, which I also got very late. So the eShop on the 2DS was really my like sort of foray into that. And it was just kind of like, wow, there's just so much great stuff on here. And now with the Switch, like, I'm just on the eShop all the time, like looking for sales, and stuff is always on sale. Like any given time, I can look at my wish list, which is 30 plus games or whatever it is right now, and at least a couple are on sale, and it's never like 10% off. It's always like 20% off, 50% off. It's always like
just enough to be like, oh, I should get this now.
It
may never be this discounted again.
Right.
Which, of course it will be.
Right, of course. Always.
All right. Well, I think we've talked about the Switch enough and how much we love it. Do you want to get into the music?
Sure.
All right.
But I just want to be clear about one thing. The games we're picking are not necessarily Switch exclusives.
Correct.
They just happen to be games that are on the Switch.
If you have a Switch, you will be sure to be able to find these on the eShop or in physical cartridges. But a lot of these games are also available on other systems as well, so don't let the fact that it's a Switch indie show turn you off if you don't own one. I'm sure if you have a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Windows computer, you'll be able to check some of these titles out if any of them interest you. So, speaking of that, what do we got up first?
So my first track is from a game called Velocity 2X, which is one of the couple on here I have not played, but I've seen quite a bit of it. It's a pretty cool sort of action platformer / shmup.
Cool.
Pretty neat. The soundtrack is fantastic. This track is called Perilous Escape, again from Velocity 2X. Let's check it out.
All right.
Welcome back. That was Perilous Escape from the game Velocity 2X, composed by Joris de Man. I'm sure I'm butchering that. And get this, James Marsden, apparently. If anybody knows who that is.
He was the guy that played Cyclops.
He played Cyclops. I'm sure that's not the same guy, but we just kind of found that out over the break. Apparently, he is credited as being, what was he?
He was credited as sound. I think music too, but he was the game director of Velocity 2X, so he probably contributed some incidental music here and there, maybe
some suggestions, maybe along the way. Anyway, so like I said, I had not played this game. I'm definitely intrigued to play it, mostly because the soundtrack is so good. This song, in particular, I just love the synth sounds and the sort of like inspiring, heroic feel of it. Makes me just want to like jump into a spaceship and I don't know. The game is really cool because it's sort of, oddly enough, is exactly sort of the game I always imagined a Metroid game being. So it takes some inspiration from it visually. Like the main character is a blonde woman wearing what appears to be some form of the Zero suit. Really looks like Samus to me. I always sort of envisioned a Metroid game where you would do like a platforming segment, like an exploration sort of segment, typical of Metroid, but with a scene that sort of transitions into Samus in her gunship. I always really wanted to see.
She does fly around in that a lot. You never really get to actually.
Yeah, you've never seen her fire her weapons really from her. But it's not. I would like to.
If you do, it's a cutscene. You know, her space journeys, considering there are space pirates in this universe, always seem to be very peaceful until she actually lands on a planet.
Yeah, and that's all you really see. But they refer to it as a gunship.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it used as a gunship. You know what I mean? I'd like to control it and see what happens.
Yeah.
And like in Metroid Prime 3, you know you have to fly it, to go from one planet to another, but you don't actually fly at it. You just get in the ship
and kind of cruise along.
Yeah, and it just takes you there. But that seems to be how this game is. Like I said, I haven't played it, but there's a pretty fast-paced action segment of the game. I'm not really sure how it transitions into the other form, which is where you get into her ship and you're actually in like a top-down, vertically scrolling shmup, although it doesn't appear to be auto-scrolling. It doesn't really look like any shmup that I've seen.
Yeah, like your ship is very small, and it's kind of a lot of geometric shapes.
Yeah.
And you can dash, but when you dash, you can use the dash to go through walls and blockades and stuff. So you kind of have to time your dashes in the direction of your dashes, almost kind of puzzle-like to get from one spot to another.
I guess in that way, it's maybe not much of a shmup. It looks more like one than it is. But either way, it's cool how the game sort of has two main modes that it kind of goes back and forth to.
Yeah.
Sort of like that unreleased Super Nintendo Rendering Ranger game.
Oh yeah, R2.
Yeah, isn't that kind of how that is sort of?
I think that's kind of a genre bender too.
Yeah. But like I said, I think a Metroid game done in the right way, where you're actually shifting from one play mode to another, would be really, really cool.
What really struck me about this song was it uses a lot of kind of like modern electronic aesthetics, like top 40 synth pads and that kind of stuff. But the melody and the structure of the song sounds very old school demo scene to me. So there's a kind of anachronistic
interesting
combination of two different sound styles, which was nice. That lead is definitely like your just basic square that you would hear on any mod file that's out there. And all the backing stuff is just this really textured kind of
I love the
modern
bass.
VST stuff.
The bass has a really FM feel to it. There's also an octave on it, so you get like sort of like an octave bass feel, or just like a lead line that's playing the same thing as the bass. And that octave sound is so powerful.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I love how the song goes from like what you would maybe consider a verse, which has a more of a kind of intense sort of urgency to it, and then when it kind of like explodes into the chorus, which has a much more, like I said, like inspiring feel, like you're about to succeed in whatever it is you're doing. Yeah. And I love the juxtaposition of those two parts. It's really cool.
I wonder if the music, I mean, this is just conjecture, but I wonder if the music is dynamic and you get kind of these different parts depending on what kind of gameplay style you're playing, and then they just kind of arrange that for the soundtrack version of it. That's interesting.
Not really sure.
So speaking of other music and arrangements, Joris de Man has done quite a few AAA titles. He has composed the award-winning soundtracks for Killzone 2 and 3, which were huge Sony PlayStation games. And then he also wrote the soundtrack for Horizon Zero Dawn, which is a relatively recent PS4 release. And both of those are very, like, quote-unquote quintessential AAA soundtracks, very orchestral, cinematic scores, and it's like a 180-degree difference from this very electronic, kind of almost dancey soundtrack. So this is a really versatile composer.
It sounds like he was just having fun with this one. Maybe, he wasn't given such a strict, this is the game, this is the feel, we want you to score this game. It was more of write music you think fits and have fun with it.
This is old school stuff, so make it old school, and he kind of just ran with it. Yeah. So I think the original version of this game was called Velocity Ultra, and so I don't know if he wrote the music for Velocity Ultra, and then it was kind of either updated or just reused for Velocity 2X, but I think Ultra came out in 2013 or something like that, so he might have even done this soundtrack first, and then moved on to the Killzone stuff. I'm not sure what order those came in, but in any case, yeah, definitely, if you go listen to like the Horizon Zero Dawn soundtrack as compared to this, you wouldn't even be able to tell it was the same guy doing both of them. So.
Right. It's more of a film score.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I gotta check this one out. It seems pretty cool. It seems like a good game that you can kind of take on the go and not have to worry about needing a big screen and a pro controller to play correctly. Ready for my pick?
Hell yeah.
All right. First up on my list is Dragon of the Diamond Cave. This is Boss 3 from Giga Wrecker Alt. This is available on the PC, Switch, and PS4 in 2017. Composed by, and this is why I picked it, Super Sweep, Shinji Hosoe, Takahiro Eguchi, and Teruo Taniguchi. We'll be right back. Holy crap, that was Dragon of the Diamond Cave, aka Boss 3, from Giga Wrecker Alt. That's available on PC, Switch, and PS4. Came out in 2017. Composed by the Super Sweep team Shinji Hosoe, Takahiro Eguchi, and Teruo Taniguchi. And I just played a track from Shinji Hosoe last episode from Ridge Racer 7, and I was kind of talking on that episode about his Ridge Racer soundtrack and how that really got me into electronic music. Kim, I'm sure you remember from the show I did with Rob Nichols about, we talking about like drum and bass and Shinji Hosoe's influence on my musical career. And this is like Ridge Racer music all grown up. It's it has that same intensity and that same kind of bum, 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 ready to go kind of feel, but using much more sophisticated sounds and equipment. I just absolutely love this track.
It's intense. At moments, it's very intense. Like, I really love the progression of the parts, and just the chords kind of go places you don't really expect them to.
They're almost like different movements.
Yeah. But there's that part in the middle where it just it turns into like dub pop, or I don't know what to call it, but that really intense.
Yep.
Where it sounds like the compression has like a really low threshold, so like whenever there's a peak, it compensates by pushing it way down, and you get almost like a muting feel, which is sort of like off-putting for me with like dubstep and things like that, where it's just like you can't just have a flowing beat, because in between every kick there's that muted, it feels like the volume just disappears each time it hits, which like again sounds like a really low threshold compressor. So that is a little weird when I hear stuff like that, but I really like the intense feel of the song, especially when it kind of goes and it climbs back up into that like and it hits back into that part. That's really cool. It's a really cool track, which doesn't seem to fit what I've seen of the game so far, but like you said, it's a boss.
Yeah, I think the game is kind of split personality. I haven't played it myself, but I've seen a bit of video on it, and it looks almost like a puzzly kind of platformer, almost with like some Katamari elements, because you're gathering. Yep. I think when you defeat enemies, they split up into parts. And
looks
then
like junk, a pile of junk.
Yeah, you use your magnetism to kind of build this giant ball, and you need a certain amount of weight in that ball or size in that ball to lift up platforms or kind of catapult things over each other to kind of get you through these levels. So there's, action in terms of defeating the enemies, but then you also need to kind of manage the leftovers of the enemies to help you get through the rest of the stage.
It's a very cool concept.
Yeah, and then the bosses, and so the music during those stages is very kind
chill.
of
the gameplay itself seems
chill
very
electronic stuff.
Yeah.
And then these bosses are like ultra intense. So I think with the bosses, you're kind of using all the skills that you've learned during the stage in kind of a very quick.
I haven't seen it yet, but you got to be quick on your feet, I imagine.
Right, exactly.
The boss battles.
Exactly. So, cool game. I don't know too much about it. Like I said, it's got a very anime theme. I mean, obviously the composer's Super Sweep is basically Shinji Hosoe's record label. So some of the X-sampling masters are on there, and a lot of other Japanese composers who have worked for Namco or other Japanese video game companies, and they're kind of like audio mercenaries. You can just hire them on. They're not loyal to one specific game developer.
That's how it should be.
And they just kind of wander around, throw out some awesome techno jams, and get back on their bus and fly away. So,
never to be heard from again.
Until the next time somebody throws cash at them.
Yeah, right. One thing that struck me about this game, and though it looked, the art style is absolutely nothing like it, but the animations really reminded me of Salt and Sanctuary.
Yeah, it has
which, by the way, is my favorite game I've played on Switch so far.
Cool. It has a very flash animation style.
Yeah,
where the joints are kind of like
it's like a paper doll or something, where like each part of the character is like a piece that on its own doesn't move.
Yeah,
and it's put together sort of like they're
on hinge joints.
Yeah, but they're really tight, and there's lots of parts, so it doesn't look awkward. It's a really cool type of animation, and the first thing I noticed when I watched this game is the first thing that came to mind is Salt and Sanctuary, even though their games are virtually nothing alike.
Yeah,
it's a similar type of animation.
Yeah, and it creates some very smooth but very unnatural kind of animation too. Yeah. So it's always really interesting to look at and to kind of and then from what I understand, it's kind of very processor or very light on the processor to do those kind of animations, because you're just creating 2 points and then the joints move between it instead of animating by hand an entire motion or something. So I think they kind of use that as a way to enable you to carry around all of these like large sprites and just tons of junk, and to have lots of motion on the screen at once and still have a good looking character that seems to move, smoothly.
Yeah, it works out, because if it were just to make it easier to animate, you think maybe, well, they're taking a shortcut and it might look stupid, but it actually translates to a really cool type of art, I think. I really like that art style.
Exactly. And then that's with Salt and Sanctuary, what's his name? Ska Studios. They used a lot of that for their original couple games too. Like I Made a Game with Zombies in it, and The Dishwasher.
Right,
had those kind of animations as well. And I think he started off doing Flash games. I think he was on Newgrounds doing games for them before he moved into like Xbox Live Arcade and then the Xbox 360 indie store. So
I could see some. Are you familiar with David Firth at all?
Oh yeah,
wacky,
Salad
wild,
Fingers?
messed up. Yeah.
The
characters in Salt and Sanctuary remind me of Salad Fingers.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
there's a lot of influence
there. Yeah. And actually, for this episode, I had a track from Salt and Sanctuary on this list, because I just wanted to talk about Salt and Sanctuary. But I don't think it's not the best track to,
It's kind of an ambient soundtrack.
Yeah, it also sounds just like Schism by Tool. So like it would have been just like people would have heard it and been like, oh, the Tool song. Okay. It's great, but there were other tracks I wanted to put on here. So
cool. So speaking of other tracks, what do you have next for us?
Oh boy. So this is from the game Hollow Knight, which
never heard of it.
No, nobody has. Eventually it'll take off. Maybe they'll make a sequel. So this track is called Green Path. It's from the Green Path area of Hollow Knight, my favorite track in the game. And it's composed by Christopher Larkin. Let's take a listen.
Sweet.
Welcome back. That tasty little track you just enjoyed was Green Path from Hollow Knight, composed by Christopher Larkin. I just had a nice little learning experience learning about this guy, which we'll get into in a second. But this track is everything to me. Like, it's both ambient and melodic. It has this beautiful build to it where the structure of the song itself doesn't change a whole lot, but it just sort of grows and grows, which is really kind of maybe accidentally poetic, because this area it's just a very flora-rich, very green, obviously, lots of plant life and lots of creatures that are sort of both fauna and flora at the same time. You know, it's hard to really distinguish them.
Squirtle.
And it's a beautiful area to be in. The music just, since I picked this for this episode, initially it was probably a few weeks ago. And before that, I mean, I would fall asleep to this. This is one of those soundtracks that I fall asleep to a lot. This whole soundtrack is amazing. This game is amazing. This is one of the first games that made me think, wow, this is a work of art. Like, video games, there's always sort of been the discussion of, are video games a form of art? And there can't be any question of that nowadays. I mean, this game is some of the most beautiful art I've ever seen in terms of the design, the animations, the level designs, the backgrounds, the music. it's all so gorgeous. Like there's never a point in this game where you're not aware of it. You know what I mean? Like any game, you fall into the gameplay and you're just in it. There's a lot of action. There's more boss battles in this game than I've ever seen in one game. But at least to me, there was never a moment where I forgot how beautiful it was. You know, like, 'cause you're just wandering this beautiful world of Hollow Nest, and just soaking it all in, and I just never kind of got used to it. I was always just in awe of it. And this track just is just a masterwork that just, like I said, it never really diverts from the main sort of melody and the theme of the song, but it builds and builds and builds and grows and grows. And you get those really twinkly little chimes. And then at the end, when the drums are really pounding and the cellos are driving that background, you first enter the green path and you start hearing the music, and it's really pretty, but it kind of puts you in the mind of this sort of ambient kind of thing, which really suits the level.
Yeah.
But as as you're going through a few screens, you've killed a few enemies, and the music really starts pounding. You start feeling like it's more intense. You go into the area thinking it's a really chill kind of. And then you realize you're sort of like your adrenaline is going a little bit, and you're
kind of sneaking up.
You're jumping around more aggressively, and you're attacking more enemies. There's just more going on, and then it sort of dawns on you. Oh, the music is. This was not the music that that I came into this area with, and it's really, really driving the gameplay. I highly recommend every game on this list, really, but this game, while still I say Salt and Sanctuary was a more complete experience. It's something like I'd never played before. And Hollow Knight is more of a, what you'd expect from a Metroidvania of nowadays, where it is that sort of game. And it does have a lot of original mechanics in the game. But it's not my favorite so far. In fact, I would actually even call it my third favorite.
Wow.
We'll get into that a little later. But highly recommend this game. And it's on everything. At this point, PS4, and what else is it on? Obviously, PC,
Mac, etc. So
if you haven't played this game, play it. I mean, it's $15. Goes on sale at least on the eShop often enough, and it's worth $15. It's worth $30. It's a huge game, and if it's your sort of game, if that's the genre you're into, if you're into that sort of genre, it'll hook you and it'll pull you in, and it's just a beautiful game. I can't say enough about it.
I have to go back to this one because I played it immediately after playing Dead Cells. And in comparison to Dead Cells, this game seems really slow and simple, and it was like not what I was. It's kind of like going from regular soda to diet soda. You just there's kind of a difference there that I could not appreciate as much. Like I had to play something that was like another step down from Dead Cells to get to the more basic gameplay of Hollow Knight. So I think now that I know what to expect if I'm playing some like RPGs and stuff, that I can get back into an action game.
By the way, congratulations. I'm so glad to hear you're playing those RPGs.
Thank you. Yes, I'm on my third RPG right now. Can you believe it?
I can't, but I'm
from 0 to 3.
That's just keep going.
Thank you.
Don't slow down.
Thank you. I'm almost done with Chrono Trigger. So
I've had some recommendations on deck for you, but I don't want to overwhelm you with them. So
okay,
we can talk about that.
Well, next up is Star Ocean, but we're kind of digressing. Maybe we'll talk about that at the end of the show. But anyways, yes, I did. I absolutely appreciated the artwork in Hollow Knight, and this music, especially this piece, to me feels very like classic Disney, but with modern production. Something that you might hear like in Snow White when there's, animals in the forest, or Cinderella or Bambi or something like that. So to have this in like an indie game with this kind of authentic classic video game sound is a real treat to listen to. And it matches the visuals so well, because the visuals also remind me of like a classic children's book.
Yeah,
like the old Winnie the Pooh books or something like that. It has a very kind of classic English artwork vibe to it, and it matches so well with this soundtrack. It's just it's a whole cohesive package in terms of the visual and audio aesthetic.
Right. One thing I really love about the visual aesthetic is a lot of times with games, maybe not so much these days, they're getting really, really good, but but there's no like, you know, sometimes you'll get a game where the character animations are amazing and brilliant and smooth and really nice, and the backgrounds will kind of be maybe not so much. Like you'll get sort of like a still background.
You can tell where more
maybe
the
some
time
parallax, stuff going on. But right, exactly. This game, the attention to detail in the animations is in every layer. I mean, it blends so well together. It really looks to me like a really well animated cartoon, like you're playing, you know, like a really high quality cartoon.
Yeah.
The animations are so nice, and it's from the foreground to the background. You just get so much going on, and it looks so nice. On our list of tracks today is one of the 2 games whose soundtracks fit the game just remarkably well, better than most games, I would say. It's just really well suited to the game. So this one and another one we'll get to in a few tracks from now, but save that for later.
So we didn't talk about Mr. Larkin, the composer, too much.
Let's.
So I was just doing some composer research and, looked up, I think it was Moby Games or something, where I was just trying to figure out, the composer and what other games he's done. And on Moby Games, there's a link to his website, and I'm looking at the website. I'm like, is this the right guy? Because it's not like a composer's website. It's like an actor's website. But in the corner underneath like bio and shows that he's been in, there's a music subsection. So I went there and I was like, oh, he has composed some music. So Christopher Larkin was born in Daegu, South Korea, and he was adopted by American parents, and he was raised about an hour from here in Hebron, Connecticut. And he went to Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts, and he's been on off-Broadway productions. If you've watched The 100, the show on the CW, which I think it just had its 5th season like a couple years ago. But if you remember the character on that show, Monty Green, that's Christopher Larkin. He's the composer of Hollow Knight. It's really cool. It's like, so he's creating this amazing music, and it's like, oh, this is my part-time job, but I really act for a living.
Yeah, you wouldn't even know. I mean, it's in his bio. It's almost like this masterwork that he did. And Hollow Knight was just sort of like, you know what? It's not something I really want to. I really want to
tunes for this company.
Yeah. Hey, I mean,
some grocery money.
You were telling me, as you were telling me, I wasn't sure that this was actually the guy. Yeah. I'm thinking to myself, I think you still might not be right. I was still doubting it, but it's him, Christopher Larkin from Korea, South Korea.
It's amazing what you can come up with, and how many different kinds of people can compose music for video games. It's insane.
Right, and this appears to be the sort of guy that just is amazing at everything he's ever tried.
Seems like it. Absolutely.
So good for him.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll have some more success with composing and acting in the future.
I hope. I mean, we got Silk Song, which is the Hollow Knight sequel, coming up.
Right. And
hopefully, I haven't looked into it, but hopefully he's done the music, because I can't imagine they'd change. Like I said, that music fits the game so well.
Yeah. It's usually composers become attached to games and series like this. So in this case, he'll have the time in his schedule to do it.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next track today. And my second pick of the show is Gufuku's theme from Strikey Sisters. And this came out on PC, Mac, and Switch in 2017. This was composed by Dominic Ninmark. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. That was Gufuku's theme from Strikey Sisters, and that's available on PC, Mac, and Switch. Again, came out in 2017. We got a lot of 2017 titles in this show, and that was composed by Dominic Ninmark. This is a Breakout clone, I guess you could call it, or an enhancement of the Breakout style game where you are a character on the bottom of the screen and you are swatting balls towards the top of the screen to break blocks and destroy enemies, etc., etc. And games like this leave a lot open for cool music, I think, because there's a lot of time in between sound effects, and there's a lot of like open space in the game between like where the ball gets hit and the ball actually ends up hitting the blocks. So kind of like slower paced action games, there's a lot of opportunity for the music to kind of shine through.
And more time for you to be able to pay attention.
Exactly. And so I think they did a really good job here with the music like that is mid-paced, very appealing sound sets, like lots of really nice, smooth sounding instruments with a little bit of intensity. You get like some of those like beats come in where there's a little bit of like guitar going and kind of rises and falls a little bit, but it never really gets to the point where you're like, oh my god, I'm panicking so much that I'm not going to be able to play anymore. You know?
Right. I like that wood flute or the pan flute sort of lead that comes in. It's really nice.
Reminds me of Joe and Mac on the SNES. I don't know if you've ever played that, but that was
I'm sure I've
Pan
heard
Flute
some.
City
on that
soundtrack.
It's really nice sound. I like it.
So this game, it's cool. It's got kind of an anime style, but it's not like a Japanese game. I think it was actually developed in Sweden. But the storyline, there are fully voiced cutscenes in between each level that you play. There's several different worlds with different themes and bosses that you fight against. If you've ever played like Wizorb on Steam or PC, it's kind of similar to that. That had more of like an NES feel to it. This one's got more of a 16-bit like.
This to me, it looks like a Game Boy Advance game.
Okay, definitely.
Or maybe like a PlayStation.
Like an original PlayStation.
Yeah. But more Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
Graphic style.
Widescreen, smaller sprites, kind of like that.
The color palettes.
32-bit pixel art.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fun game. I haven't played it that much. The nice thing about it is two-player, regardless of what system you're playing it on. So with the Switch, you can just turn each Joy-Con sideways because you don't need a crazy amount of buttons or dual analogs or anything. So you each take a little controller, and even if you're out on the go, you can just set your screen down and both play mobile at the same time, which is really nice. It's a great game because it's a single screen game, so it's not like people need to have their own visuals to know what's going on. So it's set up perfectly for that.
I love it. I think it's really cool. I know there are a lot of games of this type out there, but I've never really played. I never played Breakout. I think I may have played Arkanoid in the arcades once or twice, but the only game like this I ever really played much of was Thunder and Lightning on the NES. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah, I grew up with Breakout on the 2600. That was one of my favorite games. So these kind of games always feel very natural to me because I was kind of learning to play those when I was like 3 years old. So
I love how this has a two-player mode. Looks really fun in this game. And as of this recording, was it June 22nd today, right? It's on sale in the eShop, a couple bucks off. So
see if it still exists once this show comes out.
Probably not.
So a little bit of enhancement on the gameplay that this one offers, because you are a pair of magical witches. You get spells as well. So when you destroy enemies or when you hit chests and you catch the spell item that comes down from them, you can hit the B button and then you can shoot a beam of energy, or you can throw a couple heat-seeking missiles, or do something like turn the enemies to stone. There are a lot of different spells you can use in addition to just bouncing a ball back and forth to get the blocks.
It sounds like I could have fun with this game for a long time.
I think you will. There's shops you can visit to get power-ups and stuff, so there's like a little bit of RPG elements thrown in with a Breakout clone, which is a really cool combination of things. So as far as the composer goes, Dominic Ninmark, he's from Sweden. He's got a YouTube channel under the name Nitro Flasher, and he's got a ton of VGM remixes on there. He's a really big Mega Man X fan. He seems to have a lot of like Mega Man X covers and remixes and stuff. He's also written the soundtracks for some indie titles, Rival Mega Gun, Bot Vice, and Viviette. The only one I've heard of so far is Rival Mega Gun, which is kind of I think it's like a horizontal shooter, but you like grab weapons from other enemies and kind of combine them together to make.
Yeah, that is versus shmup, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
So you have
you're right.
you have like a vertically scrolling on each side, and you kind of like shoot enough enemies, and eventually you build up your bar to the point where it hurts the other guy or something like that.
Yeah.
That looks really cool.
And you can shoot parts off them to build onto your own ship to get yourself more powerful. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's also on Switch too. That if it's not, that would make a good Switch game.
It's on my wish list.
I imagine the soundtrack to that is probably nothing like this. So
it's funny. I remember a while back looking for the soundtrack and I couldn't find it.
Interesting.
Because Rival Megagun was one of the games that piqued my interest early on, and then I thought of it when making my selections for this episode. And I looked for a soundtrack and I couldn't find it, but I found a ton of other stuff. So
maybe it's on Nitro Flasher's YouTube channel. We'll have to check it out.
Perhaps.
All right. So what you got next for us, sir?
All right. So next up is from the game we mentioned at the top, One Strike. It's a really fun game. Stage Music 6, composed by Diogo Bazante and Mateus Pereira.
Pereira.
Yeah,
let's go with Pereira.
Yeah, sounds good.
So I think these are the composers from the original version of the soundtrack. I'm not sure if they listed the composers for the second version of the soundtrack.
I'm not sure.
Because these were listed in an article that came out before the game was released. So it must be from the original. Okay. But we're going to talk about that when we get back. Right. Listeners, you better enjoy this song because this is the whole reason we're here today, according to Cam. So
dig it.
We'll be right back.
We are back. That was Stage Music 6 from the game One Strike, composed by Diogo Bazante and Mateus Pereira. Do you want to get into the complexities of the of the history
Maybe
of the...
we should talk about that first, just to kind of clear, because we're going to be throwing up a lot of questions.
I feel like there needs to be some clarifications.
Yeah, so the way that I understand it is this game was released with one soundtrack, and shortly after it got released,
somebody pointed out
that the music was directly ripped from a Famicom game called Hureo Senki Madara, which is a VRC6 NES soundtrack.
Awesome soundtrack.
Famicom soundtrack. Yeah. So they immediately, upon learning this, took the game down from all of the eShops that it was available for. So it was on Steam, it was on Switch, etc., etc. So they took them down from both of those. The developers changed the soundtrack, got new music put in, and re-released it, and now it's stayed that way. So now the only way you can get it is with this new non-Madara soundtrack. Yeah. I don't know. I've seen these two composers listed. There's no credits in the game, and there's no credits on the website. So there's no official attached names to the music of this game. And so I've seen these names attached to the game by promotional materials were put out around the time that the game was released. So I'm assuming these were the names from the original soundtrack. So I don't know if they are the names for the this particular track.
I think whomever composed this soundtrack, it should be, when you're looking at it should be clear who it is, because this music is great.
It is.
You know what I mean? I would like this person or these people to get the accolades they deserve, because I've rocked out to this soundtrack since discovering it many, many times.
Yeah, it's a great soundtrack. It's I think it's kind of a fake bit chiptune style.
Yeah.
So it seems to incorporate elements of like sample-based stuff with some PSG stuff and some FM stuff, like one super chip kind of all, creating a whole bunch of different tones at once, but they're blended so well that it feels like a really intense, very well-rounded chiptune. And it's very well composed too. It reminded me a lot of the like mid-golden era Falcom stuff. It had a lot of elements of like Wanderers from Ys, or
there's some
a
stuff
lot of those kind of RPGs
like
were very heroic, and a lot of crazy drum fills like every 3 measures. So what do you love so much about it?
This track in particular, I love how it begins with a sort of Iron Maiden-esque sort of 80s metal kind of feel, with melodies that kind of sound like they'd be more vocal. But with Iron Maiden and stuff like that, you have a lot of guitar harmonies going on.
Right.
So that's sort of what it puts me in the mind of, and it just sort of like plods along in a really nice kind of doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. And then it turns into this like proggy, it's got this middle section where it sort of has like this deep purple vibe with a really progressive feel, and it kind of bounces around and jumps around. The time signature changes about 6 times in 3 seconds, and then it sort of climbs back. It climbs out of that section, and it's sort of like it just like climbs back up to the top and bursts back into that 80s metal feel. I love it. And this soundtrack actually has, you're talking about how it has sort of like the sound of like an amalgam of different chips.
Yeah,
it's interesting because every track in this game, there aren't that many of them, but every track sort of it almost sounds like it was created with a different chip or a different program or something.
Yeah,
There's a lot of variation.
Like chips, because when the character select screen, it sounds like traditional Japanese music. It's live instrumentation.
That's what I'm saying. There's like so many different types of, but they blend well, and it's sort of the one thing that keeps this game interesting, aside from the simple but really engaging gameplay, is that the tracks play in a random order. So when the game starts, you don't know which track is going to play first. And you'll play several rounds with the music not changing, and then it will change. Yeah. And you don't know which track it'll change to. And I really like how it does that. So like you're focused on beating your opponent, which does take a lot of focus, because you can't like one false step or one false move and it's over. The music will still, like, you're listening for what track is next. It's really cool the way they do it.
Yeah, and speaking of the game itself, the way you introduced the game to me was, have you ever played Bushido Blade? And now whenever I introduce the game to somebody, I ask them, have you ever played Bushido Blade? Because it's the same basic tenet of gameplay. It is
fundamentally it's the same idea.
Literally called one strike and you're dead. With the Bushido Blade series, it's a 3D polygonal game, so you're able to run around a stage and kind of slice each other up with swords. With this, it's a very pixelated, almost
I call it faux retro
System style. And it's 2D, very slow paced, and it's all about who can basically hit the other person first.
Timing.
Yeah. So matches last like 10 seconds maximum, and I think it's first to 3 wins. Well,
depending on what mode you're playing,
but it's just a lot of fun for 2 people to pick up and you and your brother have got 10 minutes to wait for your mom to get ready before you leave the house. You can get in 5 matches.
Yeah. I've played this game for a lot longer than 5 minutes too, believe me.
Yeah. And so you can get a lot of gameplay in a very short amount of time and still feel like you've had a good, fulfilling session. So the game's built for very short, quick kind of gameplay sequences. And each of the characters, I think there's 6 different characters?
6 characters, and on its face it seems like very simple, and it is, but it seems like, okay, so each character can attack and block and a parry, and then you notice as you pick different characters, this character can't block, but they can do this other thing. So there are certain characters that each character has sort of a different range attack. One character, for instance, slashes with a katana blade in a chopping motion once, Another character has like a shorter sort of wakizashi or a shorter kind of ninja sword. And she doesn't just slash once, she chops twice in quick succession. So if you're the other character and you're blocking, you block that first chop and you're like, oh, I blocked it. And then the second one just comes immediately and kills you.
Yeah.
There's like different nuances. One character can't block, but he has an exceptional reach, like something like that. Another character's dodge move is also an attack. So if they dodge backwards, you think, oh, they're dodging. I'm going to go at them and try to catch them when they finish. But as he's dodging,
their feet hit the ground, they're lunging forward.
Yeah, like it's part of it's. So you have to learn each character in order to use them, and you have to learn each character to face them, which is, I think, really unique. Because in a lot of fighting games, this definitely isn't a traditional fighting game. But in most games where it's one-on-one fighting of some kind, it's more about learning the character you're using, not so much what the other character does, although there is always some of that. Yeah. This game, it's equally both. Like if you're using this one character, you better know what this other character is doing to be able to counter and to be able to fight effectively.
Because you can't just be like, oh crap, he kicked me in the face. I'll have to remember that for next time. You are dead. The round is over and you've lost that point. Yeah. So yeah, it's great for fighting game fans to kind of really challenge each other, and also for people that are getting into it new. If you're playing against someone who's experienced, you still have that chance to win because you can still get in that one hit, and feel that sense of victory and kind of learn your character as you go through. So it kind of puts people on an even playing field. Yeah. So really, really cool title. It's a title that I probably never would have even given a second thought if you hadn't introduced it, and I think it's probably been overlooked by a lot of other people too, so it's really worth checking out.
I noticed it was on the it was on sale. I got it for free just with like points and stuff, but and Cubic Games, which is the publisher, they put out a lot of very inexpensive but very simple games that are just very addictive. We got another one on this list too, which we'll get to.
Oh yeah, I noticed that. I was wondering if you knew that they were both by the same publisher. So we'll get to that in a little while. Yep. Speaking of which, let's move on to our next track. This is a game that lots of people have been talking about lately because it's a brand new release, and it's kind of one of the E3 darlings from this past E3. This is the overworld combat theme from Cadence of Hyrule. The site might be the only Switch exclusive in the entire show.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Just came out in 2019, composed by the master, Danny Baranowski. That was the overworld combat theme from Cadence of Hyrule. Came out on the Switch just a little while ago in 2019, composed by Danny Baranowski. And so the elephant in the room that I'll just clear out because it has to poop and it can't poop in the room.
Well, it can, but
yeah,
it might interfere with
Is this title technically an indie game? And I picked it because Crypt of the Necrodancer was an indie game, and this is essentially Crypt of the Necrodancer on the Switch. It was developed by Brace Yourself Games, which is an indie developer. However, Nintendo did publish it, so its status as an indie game might not be valid. Whatever. I'm leaving it in the show.
I think it has more to do with the developer than the publisher.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I think this is an indie. I think it qualifies.
I'm the Prime VGM minister. I get to say what goes.
Yeah,
so it's an indie title for the purpose of this show.
Right on.
And I just really wanted to share it because it's a great Switch exclusive that just came out, and I've been having some fun with it. And the soundtrack is absolutely incredible. It's always great to see Danny Baranowski do new music, so I wanted to share it. It's been lots of people have been sharing the soundtrack all over the VGM Facebook groups.
Noticed
and stuff.
that, yeah.
So, Cam, you don't know anything about the series,
Not at all.
right?
I didn't even know it was a series. I think I saw a preview for this a while back, thinking it was a totally different, like a new Zelda game. I don't know. I remember seeing a preview for a game that apparently doesn't exist. So I'm thinking that what I thought was that game was actually this game.
Okay.
But I still don't know. I still don't know anything about it really.
So the concept behind the game is it is similar to Zelda in that you are kind of going through dungeons as this top-down, three-quarter view, very similar to Link to the Past or Link's Awakening or any of those classic-style Zelda games. But your movement is tile-based, so you move up, down, left, and right. You don't have you don't have free movement to go wherever you want.
That's not very Zelda.
You jump from tile to tile on the beat of the song. And if you miss a beat, well, there's two different ways to play. So you can play in rhythm mode, which means you have to move on the beat. And if you land on a tile next to a character, you automatically attack them, and then you can turn and attack. As long as it's on the beat, you're kind of like almost dancing with the enemies as they move around the screen in patterns to attack them. If you jump to a tile where there's an enemy and you're not facing the enemy, then the enemy can attack you from the side, and that's how you get hit. Or if they jump on you and you don't move, then you also get hit. So there's a couple different ways. It's almost like playing a very fast version of like chess or checkers kind of a deal as you're moving around. But there are switches you can hit and different levels that you can jump on and jump off, and things that, stones that you can move around to figure out puzzly elements of these rooms that you're walking through. So there's a lot of action RPG elements to it, as well as this puzzly rhythm. It's like
That's cool.
Combining every single genre of game, rhythm, action, RPG, platforming, all into one. And it's fun. If you're not good with the rhythm aspect of it, you can turn the rhythm aspect off, and then everything freezes on the screen, and enemies only move when you move. So it kind of gives you the opportunity to move without having to keep pushing on the beat every single time. So for people that don't have rhythm, a lot easier way to play. But it's neat. So the original version was kind of an original character going around original dungeons, and I guess Nintendo saw the game and loved it and was like, we want to bring this to the Switch, but we feel this would fit the Zelda universe really well. Would you like to adapt the game to a Zelda-style game? And Brace Yourself Games was like, yeah, sure, we'll do that, no problem. So they created Cadence of Hyrule, which is essentially a Zelda game that plays by the rules of Crypt of the Necrodancer.
You know what's funny, if I can interject here, is after that explanation you just gave, this is definitely an indie game. Because Nintendo's just like, let's put our skin on it.
Basically.
It's Nintendo's
doing
role.
a lot of that lately, too.
Nintendo's role in this game is basically, we want that too, so
yeah,
let's do that.
I think they did the same thing with, what's that game, Starwing, that they just threw Star Fox into.
Yeah,
so that was like a PC or a PS4 game, and they're like, we feel like we can make this a Star Fox game.
Who's going to say no to us?
Exactly. So, but they do it well. And when they do it, it's not like they're just slapping a skin on and it's the same game with some Hyrule characters. Yeah. This game really feels like you're wandering around Hyrule, and there are real monsters from previous games that behave the same way.
Yeah, it certainly looks like a Zelda game.
Right.
There are certain genres I'm not into, but when done in a way where there's like a twist to it, I do tend to like it. You know, like have you ever played Puzzle Quest Challenge of the Warlords?
Yes.
It's like a mobile game, but it's been on 100.
I love that game. I've played it millions of times.
Me too. I don't typically like those like gem dropping,
there's just something about that particular one.
Yeah, but when you put it into like this like fantasy RPG environment where there are like characters with stats and things, it becomes interesting, and like I like that.
Yeah.
Rhythm games, I honestly don't really care at all about rhythm games, which is weird because I'm a musician and music is like a big part of my life. But I don't really gravitate toward them. Guitar Hero and Rock Band were fun for a while. DDR is not something I've ever remotely been interested in, but if you have like a rhythm game and you add onto it all the aspects like you're talking about, get like an RPG, you put some combat in there, you make it interesting, then it definitely, sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, this game, it feels less like a rhythm game and more like a video game that you happen to be playing to the beat.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So with that said, I mean, it allowed Danny Baranowski, who's an amazing composer, to create all of these really cool remixes from music from the Zelda series, from all aspects of the game's history. And I chose this one because it's probably, the most recognizable, has the original Zelda theme in it, but there's like, themes from the Lost Woods and Gerudo Village and, all of these different aspects of the Zelda soundtracks that he's kind of, dancified. And the other cool thing about this is that there are multiple versions of the same theme depending on... So like this would play when there's enemies on the screen. You're actively attacking. It's kind of an aggressive, harder techno sound. When you've finally defeated all the enemies, the music stays the same, but it calms down into this, kind of a more gentle, like Hyrule overworld theme. And then if you happen to pop into a shop, you get more of like a jingly supermarket style version. But the song stays in the same place. It doesn't like start over again. It just kind of transitions into a new version of the same song. Cool. So it's really cool. And so he's got like 3 different versions of each of the songs. There's like 98 songs on the soundtrack or something. So he must have really gone crazy when composing for this one. But, from his work on Super Meat Boy, the original Crypt of the Necrodancer, he's an amazing composer and multi-instrumentalist. So he did not let me down when he wrote the music to this one.
No, I like it. But the Zelda theme actually kind of caught me off guard because it doesn't actually come into play until a little later in the track, right? It sort of starts.
Yeah, you can kind of tell the chord progression is there and like those backing synths when it comes
there,
in. And you're on the Zelda overworld, so you're kind of almost... You're expecting it when you start playing the game. And I think maybe there's a little bit of space in the beginning there because when you start off in the overworld, there's no enemies on the screen. So it's going to start off on that more peaceful version of it. And then by the time you get to where the actual melody is, you're going to have met the enemies and it's going to transition to the, this combat theme. He was thinking ahead when he did that, I think. So yeah, I mean, Cadence of Hyrule, definitely worth checking out. It's probably not for everybody, especially for those who, aren't that much into rhythm games. It might be worth at least checking out a friend's game just to see if it's something you might be interested in, because there's a lot of cool gameplay there, and it's a very well-produced title. So, that being said, let's move on to our next track. What you got for us, sir?
This is from the game SteamWorld Dig 2. Can't wait to talk about this game. The track is Yarrow, and it's composed by Nicholas Ackerblad. Nailed it.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Nailed it. So let's check it out.
All right.
Hey there, that was Yarrow from SteamWorld Dig 2, composed by Nicolas Acablad, probably more well known as El Huervo, which, for those of you who don't speak habla español, El Huervo is Spanish for the Huervo.
Why did you just turn into Macho Man Randy Savage?
That was Chris Farley. You never saw Chris Farley,
okay,
El Nino?
Okay. Yes.
Anyway, sorry about that. So this game has been on all the platforms, like probably most of the games we're talking about. I actually didn't play this one on the Switch. I played this on the 3DS. But even just playing it on the 3DS, this is after Salt and Sanctuary. This is my number 2 of the Switch games.
Okay, so we're filling in the blanks here.
Yeah. This, of the genre, I don't really consider Salt and Sanctuary to be in that Metroidvania genre, really, because it's kind of, the combat and the armor and item systems it's very different. It's like its own thing, I think. I mean, with like Dark Souls and stuff like that.
Right.
But as far as just the Metroidvania genre goes, this is the best one I've played so far. It's perfect. Like, this is really a perfect game. If you don't take into account the backwards jump attack buttons, you get used to it. The first one is like that too. Really, my only gripe with these games so far is the backwards control scheme, which I don't really get.
Yeah.
But this track has like there's a similarity with the Hollow Knight track, because the areas are sort of similar. There's like Yarrow is more about like fungus and mushrooms and like glowing plants, and it's really like a damp sort of cave, a lot of mushroomy stuff going on. And there is actually an area like that in Hollow Knight. But it's sort of like plant life, and it sort of starts out with this really like low key ambient sort of feel to the music, and then it kind of builds. This one doesn't so much build as much as it sort of turns into like a different sort of feel.
I felt that, yeah.
So it sort of starts out with this really twinkly, kind of mysterious feel, and then the song doesn't change. You know, the melody is the same, the instrumentation is exactly the same, but the bass comes in, and it sort of transforms the song and becomes maybe a little less mysterious and a little more foreboding. And then the bass plays for a little bit, and then the drums come in. So you kind of get this more like, it's hard to describe the feeling of it, but it's like I said, it's like foreboding, but it's also kind of maybe a little more dangerous, less mysterious.
Yeah, it reminded me of that track we played from No Man's Sky on the episode I did with Emily, the Light Sci-Fi, where it was kind of like, it was very slow, but then these really, like, the drums came in and they completely changed the feel.
Yeah.
I was immediately reminded of that, because the drums in this are almost like old record scratchy, like hip-hop style drums. They're
subtle
almost,
too, yeah.
But
yeah.
It really changed how I saw the song, and as soon as those drums came in, I was like, oh,
yeah.
I suddenly like understood what all of the original build-up was like leading to. And now if I listen to the song again, I'll have a different perspective on what it was all about. You know, it's kind of like that twist at the end of a movie or something like that.
So like this song is mostly strings, some plucked, mostly plucking of different stringed instruments and stuff. It has this really kind of intriguing, like you wander into the cave and you're kind of like, ooh, you know, what's in here? And then that doesn't change at all, but the addition of the bass transforms the song to me, to my ear anyway.
Yeah,
and then the drums don't even match the bass. It's like there's like 3 different things going on, and it changes the track, and it gives it a different audible appearance, if that's a thing.
It almost feels like it's a dynamic soundtrack. But does the music play in this order in the game itself, or do the drums and the bass come in a different?
It's not a theme really.
Okay.
And when I played the game at first, right when I walked into this area, this music immediately hit me. Unlike any track in the game, it's all good stuff, but this one in particular really like made me feel something, where the other tracks were enjoyable but didn't quite do that. And this area is particularly gorgeous also, so it's just a really standout part of the game to me. The game on a whole is a standout game. It's tremendous. Like it's got everything you want and everything I want out of a game like this. Some people don't like the idea of like a hub area in a game. Well, this game and its predecessor both have it all centers around a town, and you dig into the earth and you find treasure and go back up to the surface and sell it for different upgrades, which is in itself is awesome. Where the first game that was the main sort of mechanic to the gameplay. In this game, there was no focus taken off of that aspect of it, but there was more put on the combat and the platforming.
Okay.
So it took what I love about the SteamWorld Dig, the first game, that you sort of carve your way through the mines and the caves and kind of create your own path, and you just find treasure and you collect treasure, and you run out of light, you can run out of water, because you're a steambot, you're steam powered.
Okay. So you're gonna have to go back and refuel.
Right. So you gotta either find water, little pools where you can refill up your water tank. You have a light is another thing that your torch basically gets low, and you have to. There's just you're constantly you go down into the mine, and you're constantly like, let's see how much I can collect, and
Yeah.
And then you have to go and kind of refresh. And this game retains all of that. The graphics are better. The controls are even tighter. There's more combat. The combat is great. The secondary weapons that you have tools, kind of like in Zelda. You have like a grappling hook, and you get different. You have a drill, which you also have in the first one, but it's improved in this one. The cog system is great, where you collect these little cogs, and you have different sort of attributes and different items that you can attach the cogs to, and each item you get different upgrades for that item, and you have to sort of you distribute your cogs to those items to give yourself different abilities.
Okay.
It's sort of like materia.
I was just gonna say, it sounds like materia.
Yeah, it's sort of materia like. Actually, when I think about it, it's quite similar. But that sort of system in this sort of game, it's freaking perfect.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a match made in heaven.
Yeah,
yeah.
Exploring is so much fun in the first game, and it's improved in this game. This took a great game and made it, another 100% better. It's awesome. Such a good game.
Cool.
And I still have yet to play it on the Switch. Like I said, I played it on the 3DS, but it was just on sale recently, and I had to convince myself, hey, you know what? I'm better off getting a game I haven't played yet.
Yeah.
I'm kind of kicking myself for not picking it up when it was 50% off.
Well, the fact that you wanted to buy it twice is testament enough. For me to check it out. For some reason, I've kind of avoided all the SteamWorld games. Like, I guess I just never really knew enough about them to really understand it. Like, it never seemed like they were for me, but the way you're explaining this one, it seems, even the original SteamWorld Dig, like that, it just seems like a really cool concept that
it's so cool.
I'd like to check out.
I had, my friend had recommended to me a couple times, and I was sort of thinking like the way you are, like, it's I don't know, it doesn't sound like my kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I got it, and I was hooked on that first game, and then the second game, I think the first time I played, the first time I played the second game was on Purnell's Switch, I think. So I actually technically have played it on the Switch, but I do want to pick it up.
Cool. Yeah, I might check that one out myself after my way too long backlog is finally done.
Tell me about it. I mean, there are games that are just like at the top of my list.
Yeah.
Still, somehow I never end up getting to them.
I hear you. So, as far as El Cuervo goes, I guess I'm a fan of his because I've played tracks from him from Hotline Miami 1 and 2, which he composed both musics for on Pixel Tunes. And I also, his other, really obscure indie game, Else Heart Break, I also played a track of his on one of my Free Picks episodes on Pixel Tunes. So this completes the
accidental fan. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and this one's very different from his other stuff. His other stuff's very dancey. It's subdued, but it has a consistent kind of beat. It's not nearly as chilled out and heartfelt as this track was. Does he have more upbeat music in the rest of the game?
Not really. I mean, there a lot of the music in these SteamWorld Dig games is it's ambient,
kind of understated.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sort of old westy kind of feel to some of the songs. Just like a dirty, dingy old town, from the Old West or something like that. But there is a lot of variation. Like this track is nothing really like that, but it's exactly what you want playing in that area, in that cave area. It's perfect.
Awesome. All right, well, let's move on to our next track, and my turn. So I'm gonna pick Big Guy Punch. We'll go in a little bit different audio direction here. This one is from Akane. This came out on the PC and Switch in 2018, composed by Sybase. And that was Big Guy Punch from Akane. That came out on the PC and Switch last year, 2018, composed by Sybase, otherwise known as Glauber Barreto. This is that song that plays in every movie where the action hero has to visit the bad guy's club to go rescue the girl that's like held in the back. And there's this like ominous yet kind of off-putting hardcore techno song that everybody's dancing to, and he's just like pushing them out of the way, and they're like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he shows his gun, and they're like, "Oh no!" And he just keeps on walking towards the back room. Like, this is that song.
Definitely. Did you watch The West Wing?
I did not.
There's an episode in the show where the president's daughter is kidnapped, and it happens in a club, and there's a Massive Attack song playing.
Oh yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I didn't think about that until just now. Like, I could totally see this song as being the song in that scene.
For sure.
You're right on about that.
I mean, I used to watch Alias, and like every third episode was like Sidney Briscoe going to a club run by a bad guy, just another excuse to put her in like a different colored wig. Yeah. But the music was always this kind of music.
Yeah. Sorry for the spoiler, by the way. Check out The West Wing. It's great.
Now I'm just not going to watch it because you've spoiled the entire series for me, I'm sure. But yeah, this music really fits this game. And I think it fits the gameplay as well, because this starts off very monotonous. You know, it's just that drony bass with the tugga chugga tugga chugga tugga, very train-like kind of beat. And then once it gets to where it finally ends up, you're like, oh, now I see where this build-up was going for the whole time, and it just kind of takes off. It's just everything that I love about hard dance music. And the way you play this game is it's just one large kind of rectangular enclosed area, and it's just fight till you die.
It's just non-stop assault. I love it. This is the other Cubic Games game that's on here. And like I said, they make these games that just are very simple in concept, but to play them is like way more involved than you initially thought.
Hidden depth, yeah.
I've not gotten that far yet, but I've played this game probably for an hour at the longest, which is a long time to play a game like this. I love it.
Survived for an hour, or
no?
I don't think anybody can survive.
No. I think I got to the third part, so I beat two of the bosses. So I got to the third section. It's hard. Yeah, it gets to the point where it's really hard.
I've beaten the first boss, but I haven't gotten beyond him
It's the same guy you fight every time. But But like there's like the narrative plays out with the dialogue you have with this guy, like in between, at the end of each act, I guess you could say.
Okay. Yeah, so it starts off this girl, Akane, and you basically end up in a standoff with the bad guys. It's like the Yakuza, or I don't know, some large group of... And the bad guys are like, we've got you now, Akane. And Akane is like, if I'm going to go down, like I'm going to die here, but I'm going to take as many as you can, many as I can of you with me. And that's basically the concept. Kill as many people as you possibly can, and they all run at you, and it's just basically like a modern samurai movie scene where tons of dudes are just piling on you, and you're slicing your sword, and you know, everybody's basically a one-hit kill, including you. So whether they're shooting at you or trying to slice you, you've got to dodge or dash or shoot or slice your way out of all these crazy situations. And you earn money? No, you don't earn money as you go.
You money.
Unlock items.
Yeah, there are challenges, and it shows you on the screen in between each attempt.
Right.
The challenges.
Like kill 30 guys without dying.
Right.
It was like one of the first ones.
Yep. And then as you complete them, I still have a bunch, but as you complete them, you unlock stuff. Most of which is useless, from what I can tell. It's mostly just aesthetic stuff, like you have a different color cigarette.
The trail behind you.
Yeah, like one of the items is actually like a pack of cigarettes.
Right.
And like as you unlock different ones, they're just different colors, and they're like in your pocket or something. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But.
Some of them have benefits to you. Like
some of them do.
Some of them you like kind of like a Stylian axe. You have an energy meter that goes down as you swipe your sword, and if you swipe too much, you have to recharge. So you'll have one that makes your energy go down less or recharge faster, stuff like that. So there are some benefits to.
There are boots that make you dash longer or just make you faster, stuff like that.
Yeah. So it's again very simple, easy to get into, but difficult to master.
It's addictive to me. It's one of the more addictive games I've played in a while. She can slash, shoot, block, and dash. And as you kill enemies, you build up your power meter. And once it gets to a certain point and turns yellow, you can sort of unleash. And it does this
like special attacks.
It sort of like goes to this slow down section where you can sort of run in a straight line, and it traces out this line. And if you run through a bunch of enemies, she does this quick like slash move and kills all the enemies in that path.
Yeah.
And if you build her power meter all the way up and you unleash that attack, you just tap the attack button as much as you can, and she does that. She sort of traces through all the enemies on the screen in sort of like a connect the dots
Zigzags
fashion,
and slices,
and just. But it goes to this quick little cutscene where it goes right up to her face, and this like really cool, like dirty anime look, and she's got this cigarette hanging out of her mouth, and the look on her face, it's like 4 frames of animation, and it shows the like look on her face get really intense, and then she unleashes this attack and like kills however many enemies are on the screen all at once.
Really badass.
It's really badass, yeah. I love it. This is a really cool track too. One thing I love about the track is there's sort of like 3 rhythms going on at once. There's like the and then there's the and there's also the
yeah.
So it's like 3 separate,
and they come up and drop out depending on how the song wants to feel at the time. Yeah.
And like you said, like it sort of starts out, you're like, this is kind of groovy, and then it gets to the point where it's just like there's that secondary melody that comes in, and then there's that do, and it just gets really intense, and it kind of like fades out and loops. And I also really love that fine pitch bend where that synth sound kind of bends and kind of goes out of pitch
like
just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it just sounds like this buzzy kind of like distorted glitch almost, and then it just kind of culminates when everything kind of comes back.
Yeah, it's all part of that like off-puttedness I was talking about at the beginning.
Definitely,
it feels kind of weird, like something's just a little evil about
this. Yeah. I mentioned with Hollow Knight, that game and this game, the music fits the game.
Yeah,
perfectly.
Oh yeah, for sure,
perfectly.
And it's cool because Sybase, this is the first game he's ever composed for.
Wow.
Like I said, his real name is Glauber Barreto. He's from Sao Paulo, Brazil, and you can find his other releases on his SoundCloud, or he's also a recording artist with Lost Tribe Recordings and Beatwise Recordings. So he does techno like this, but then he also writes a lot of beats for like rappers to rap over, a lot of hip hop stuff, which you can kind of tell from this track. It's got that kind of gritty, like rhythm feel. I couldn't see anybody really rapping over this one, although I've been surprised in the past. But yeah, he's got a lot of slower stuff and more urban sounding stuff. This game's getting pretty good reviews, so hopefully he'll get some recognition for it and might do some more music in the future, because that would be really cool to hear more of his stuff on games.
And one thing that's cool is, I don't know if you noticed, are you familiar with the Wilhelm scream?
Oh yeah,
it makes an appearance in this game, which I think is awesome. That's as you're killing enemies, which is constant. I mean, it's just like constantly, and then every so often you get the whatever. I can't do it, but the Wilhelm scream is in this game. I think is freaking great.
It's free, so may as well take advantage of it, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to our next track. And what you got for us now?
This is from the game Alwa's Awakening. The track is called Central Alwa, that is. Composed by Robert Kreese. I hope you enjoy it. we're back. That was Central Awa from the game Alwa's Awakening for all the consoles, composed by Robert Crease.
The Atari 2600.
Yeah, right.
The Lynx.
Yeah. This is an NES game. You know, this is
pseudo NES game, yeah.
Right, but like I say that because a lot of the games that are the retro style games made now are not. They're like I said, they're kind of faux retro. Yeah. They're graphics that are built to
retro
appear retro. Right. Whereas this game, especially the soundtrack, this is an NES sound chip, a 2A03 sound chip soundtrack. You always got the two squares, the triangle, and the noise, and the sampled drums. And that was one of the first things that I noticed about this game when I saw it. I was like, oh, that looks a little more true retro than some of the other games.
Yeah.
And then I listened to the soundtrack. I was like, oh my god! Like you can tell that was definitely the inspiration of this game. Is let's make a game that could have been an NES game. And I think they definitely achieved it. There's a couple moments, like cutscenes and things, where the graphics look a little like maybe they might have been on like a Tandy computer game or something, where the colors are a little different and the edges look a little different. But for the most part, it plays and sounds like an NES game.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
it's like a love letter to
the
NES.
It's great. The game itself, I'm actually in the middle of it now. I'm currently playing it. Is solid. It's good. I wouldn't rave about it. I mean, it is kind of run-of-the-mill for games of its...
Is it like a Metroidvania style game, or is it more of an action platformer?
It's
like
more of a...
A
It plays a little differently, but it reminds me more of like a Faxanadu or a Adventures of Link.
Okay.
Cool. That's Faxanadu, I guess, to most people.
You're wrong, but okay.
Well,
when you say it like that, you're wrong.
I always said Faxanadu until I realized, it's Famicom Xanadu.
Exactly.
Of course it's Xanadu.
Exactly.
So that's what I say now. I had to force myself to say it because it's...
that.
Yeah.
I'm like the guy running down the street with the Xanadu flag, like telling everybody to compose.
I'm with you 100% on that. But it is more like that, where it's not just... I'm having trouble distinguishing what it is exactly that makes Adventures of Link and Xanadu different from those games. But there is something where it's more like linear, just in terms of the gameplay and the presentation, not necessarily the exploration.
Okay.
Where maybe it's more like Simon's Quest in that way. But you play as a witchy, wizardy girl, and she has a magic wand, and you don't collect. There's a few gems, different colored gems that she puts in her wand and gives her abilities to interact with the environment. In ways to help solve puzzles and traverse the terrain. So, for instance, you get a green gem that allows you to create a block, and you use that block to push around and get up higher, a block to, traverse water and stuff like that.
Cool.
So it's sort of like you've played Solomon's Key.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like you create those blocks to get around with it's almost that same mechanic, but
neat.
It's not very exciting. There's not a lot of action, you know what I mean? It plays very true to some of those older NES games, which maybe to some of the standards of today's like Metroidvania kind of action games, it's like maybe seems a little underwhelming, which is kind of sad because there's so many great NES games. This plays very much like one of those games, and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Cool.
And there are even moments in it where you might be just kind of like, well, I can't do that. There's no way to do this. In some NES games, there's seemingly no way to do it.
Yep.
But conversely, which is weird, is one thing I don't like about this game is that it's overly helpful, overly descriptive. When you talk to like somebody in a town, they won't give you a vague clue. They'll tell you, if you get the green gem, it'll allow you to do this here.
Okay.
So get that item, come back here, do this exact thing, and then you'll be able to. So it's So it's like, okay, well, I would rather just find an item and be like, what's this for?
Right.
And figure it out. But so there's no mystery there. Like when you find an item, you're like, oh, that's the item I was told to find that does this exact thing in this exact spot. So it's like,
no surprise there.
it's like, oh, okay. Some of the dialogue is written it's way too on the nose.
Yeah.
And it's not even a translation issue because it's it was written in English. It's not very well written, but it's minor. I mean the game itself is fun. I won't go crazy telling everybody to drop what you're doing and play it. definitely play SteamWorld Dig 2 and Hollow Knight.
Yeah. Sounds like a fun game to get when it's on sale.
Yeah, put this one on your list and get to it eventually. It's more about the fact that they nailed what they were going for in terms of the NES look and sound of it, which they nailed. But we haven't really talked about this track at all yet. But one thing I love the most about this track, which is what kind of hooked me right away, is the use of the change in duty cycle, which is basically a change of the sound of the square channels.
Right.
So you have a square channel, and you can alter the sound of it by changing the duty cycle. And so this track, it starts out with the main melody. The first line is one duty cycle, the second is another, and then the rest of the verse, you could say, is a different one. So it sort of sounds like three different voices.
Yeah.
One person sings the first line, another person sings the second, and then the lead singer comes in and sings the rest of the verse.
That's cool, yeah.
It really sounds that way to me, and it sounds really intentional, and I love how they did that. Not to mention that this is just a really catchy tune. It's like the main melody is just really hooky and really...
Yeah, it's backed by really strong percussion, too. I think they're using the Konami drum samples in the background, and it's got kind of given it a very full feel. I feel like they're also using all 5 channels to its full extent, too, because it's not a real NES game. So, instruments aren't going to drop out for sound effects, so they don't have to worry about kind of keeping one to a minimum to kind of not change the song too much when a jump or a hit or something occurs on screen. So... It's nice. It has a very classic feel, but at the same time with a more of a modern melody structure to it. So it's a good combination between modern indie games and the old school stuff.
Definitely. That's about it.
I've heard people talk about it, and I haven't really given it much thought, but...
it's good. Check it out.
It sounds fun. I had Solomon's Key as a kid. It was one of my childhood nostalgia games, so this might throw me back to that gameplay mechanic and kind of combining that with a platforming game.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like imagine Adventures of Link with the Solomon's Key sort of ability. There's some other things too I haven't discovered yet, but
neat. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to my next track. I'm gonna play Pliskin's Eye Patch from the next Penelope, Race to Odysseus. This came out on PC, Mac, Linux, Switch in 2015, composed by Aurélien Regard. All right, that was Pliskin's Eye Patch from the next Penelope, Race to Odysseus, released on PC, Mac, Linux, and Switch in 2015, composed by Aurélien Regard. This track kind of goes in a whole bunch of different places. That's kind of why I liked it. You're like, okay, we got some nice little house beats, and it's a kind of a chill-out techno song, and then guitar stabs come in, and suddenly you're listening to a rock track, and then it goes back into trance afterwards, but it all kind of flows really well. and I really enjoyed that about it. I was pleased and kind of surprised when I heard this song playing while I was playing the game, and I don't know, just felt it would be a good fit for this track. Have you played this game? Maybe you haven't.
I haven't played it. I've only seen gameplay of it, but it looks pretty damn cool.
So if you like combine like the old Micro Machines games with F-Zero, it's kind of like this. So you get that kind of top-down, like RC Pro-Am style view, not as like isometric as RC Pro-Am, but top-down. And then you have like these floaty racing, like anti-grav ships, kind of like Wipeout. And then you race around a track, and there's a lot of heavy competition as well. You have a boost, plus you also have like a smash attack where you can like blast through like rubble from pillars that fall over the track and stuff. So there's some depth to it. There's I think 4 players at once you can play on this game, which is pretty cool. But the story mode follows the story of Homer's classic Greek adventure, but it takes place in the future where all the characters race each other around tracks in floating cars rather than stab each other with swords and spears and stuff like that. So it's a neat way to kind of present the story. It's not a full like word for word version of the story. The characters, talk in, modern vernacular and stuff, but there's a lot of really cool cutscenes, and so if you like story mixed in with your kind of basic gameplay, you'll get a lot out of the adventure mode. But then there's also the party mode where you can all just kind of race around and have some fun too.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a lot of fun. They've obviously moved on from the previous Penelope.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, this is the next one. The original Penelope.
Right. They're trying to contemporize a little bit.
Well, yeah, the original Penelope was bicycles.
Oh, okay.
So it didn't have that kind of action. It
seems like a reasonable transition, I'd say.
Yeah, it was kind of like, that was more like Paperboy meets F-Zero.
Right.
The next Penelope kind of took it up to the next
That
notch.
Penelope is so passé.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the Penelope that came before that, you were just walking.
Yeah. What's even the point?
So a little bit about the music. Aurelian Regard is the developer, coder, and composer behind the game. It's kind of like a one-man show. He did everything, which is really cool. He founded Arcado Studio in 2006 and released a game called Nervous Breakdown in 2007.
That's Brickdown.
Brickdown, not Breakdown. Nervous Breakdown. And then Big Bang Mini in 2009. Those were both DS games. He closed down Arcado in 2013 after a couple more small releases, and then he went on to independently release the next Penelope in 2015, and then did a re-release of it in 2018 with the Switch. And now he's working on a game called Away, Journey to the Unexpected, which is an anime first-person feel-good RPG. And it looks really, really cool. It's like a really well-produced anime cutscenes, like even better than like some movies that I've seen in the quality of the anime. But then you go into first-person mode and you're kind of wandering around towns and talking to guys and then using swordplay in first person with other characters and stuff. So it's a huge jump in tech and graphics from the next Penelope, which it looks like a very basic kind of indie game in this particular title. So I think Away is going to be like the next level of his game design. Yeah.
I have to ask though, what is a feel-good RPG?
It's a
game RPG you don't have to think much about. You just kind of like.
I think it's more like a cute RPG. Like shmups have cute 'em ups where everything's like a happy animal and stuff. Okay. So I guess a feel good RPG might be more like Earthbound. Like everything's kind of cuter and.
I imagine like a Harvest Moon or something. It's not really an RPG, but you just kind of like.
Yeah, I think this one actually does have RPG like true RPG elements, but. Because Harvest Moon's more of, it's just more like a farming simulator. Yeah, exactly. So, but I don't know. I mean, I haven't played the game. I don't think it's out yet. So I guess we'll figure out what his definition of feel-good RPG is when it comes out. So next Penelope is fun. It's. I'm not like Always Awakening. I'm not going to say run out and buy it immediately. Grab it when it goes on sale, especially if you have a bunch of people that want to play with you. If you guys had fun playing Micro Machines in the past. Or, like playing RC Pro-Am or the multiplayer RC Pro-Am 2 on the NES. This might be a fun game to try out. And then, after you're done playing all the multiplayer stuff and you get good at the game, you can get into the story mode and start racing against classic Greek monsters and villains.
Who hasn't wanted to race
hovercars.
against Cyclops?
It's been a dream of mine.
Yeah.
Cyclops, Minotaur, all those classic Greek mythological monsters.
I can just imagine like a Mario Kart type game with like titans and monsters crammed into these little
awesome.
into these little cars with their knees up in the air.
Call it Homer Kart. People would get confused with The Simpsons, but
yeah.
All right, let's move on to our next track. What you got for us, sir? This is your last pick of the show.
So this is from the game Katana Zero. The track is called You Will Never Know, composed by Bill Kiley. Let's check it out.
Cool. Yeah, I just heard Robin Purnell talking about this on the latest Rhythm and Pixels, so I'm curious to hear your take on it.
Welcome back. That was You Will Never Know from Katana Zero, composed by Bill Kiley. This is another one I have not played. It's one of the ones I want to play the most that are on deck. This game looks so cool. Have you seen this game?
I have not. I've heard people talk about it, but I've never actually seen any.
It looks
gameplay.
like I can only describe like the aesthetic as like ninja noir. Like the way
you got my attention.
The way it's just like, I mean, it's presented in this really dark, dreary world, and the protagonist seems to be sort of really almost depressed and just, living in this little rundown apartment. I don't know. I'm not going to go too much into that because I don't know too much about it, and I don't want to sound like I don't want to, start making stuff up, but. It looks really cool. Like the gameplay, there's a lot of like slow it down to do like fancy moves and like there's a lot of stealth stuff involved and a lot of like different ways to it's really bloody too. A lot of different ways to kill your enemies and a lot of different special attacks and stuff. It looks really cool, but the music to me is like it has this 80s feel that I really love, and a lot of music nowadays is done sort of with that retro kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
But this really puts me in the mind of like somebody who's like walking down the street at night and is really down on his luck, and like a scene in an 80s movie where there's just music playing and all the acting is just like looking miserable, walking down the street, reflecting on something that had just happened, you know, like,
yeah.
It's kind of rainy. It's not raining hard, but it's wet and just sort of
Just
like
enough to be annoying.
Yeah. And I love just the synth pop sound to this. And then at the end, it goes into that really chippy, solo-y demo scene sounding stuff.
Sure. I noticed that too.
And I love the build up to it, and then like the sort of the fall to that subdued sort of ending. It's really beautiful. It's like beautiful and tragic at the same time, and that bass tone is really kind of broken sounding, but also kind of adds to the beauty of it. It's really nice. I really, really like this soundtrack. I don't know when this track plays, but it sounds like it's probably playing during a scene or like a credits or something where there's not a gameplay going on.
Yeah.
Because it seems to kind of moves and it kind of builds and kind of ends. You know what I mean? Like, I don't imagine this track looping.
Yeah, well, the first thing I said to you when I heard it was like, it reminds me of Stranger Things.
Right,
and, I feel like Stranger Things can go into a lot of different kind of set pieces and mood pieces, but specifically like where there's kind of a danger lurking, you know, like when you're in the Upside Down or something like that. It's this song really reminded me of that kind of film noir feel where Stranger Things gets really like scary and intense. And so I can, and the thing about like 80s and synth pop is that the music, it's so multifaceted. Like this tune could work in gameplay, like exploration gameplay, but also work as a cinematic or work as a part where it's just dialogue of somebody being sad. You can pull lots of different emotions depending on where you're focusing on the song, whether it's the more bright lead synths or whether it's like that really kind of drony, kind of depressing bass line. It's like one of those things where, like, depending on how you're feeling, you might even hear the music differently. I think that's why so many people are kind of drawn to those, like the throwback, like the vaporwave and the synthwave that's really popular nowadays, is because you don't need to be in necessarily one mood to listen to it and enjoy it. And I think that's why it works in video games a lot too, because you're not always going to be hearing that music representing the same thing on the screen depending on how you're playing these games, so it can mean lots of different things to you. So this was a great, and it's a great example of well-produced 80s synthwave too. I've heard some really cheesy stuff, but this has excellent production, really nice melodies, and it really feels authentic to the old 80s stuff, but is unique in that it has its own kind of personality that the composer brings to it as well. So
it has a very clean, it has a smoothness to it that you might not expect from stuff of that era,
for sure,
if that makes sense. I like how the track kind of, it moves around a lot, and at points there's kind of a lot of stuff going on, but the drums are always just the whole song is just very steady, but there are points where there's a lot more to it than that, but it complements it really well.
It's the mark of a good song. Now I really want to hear the rest of the soundtrack.
You got to check out the game too. It just looks amazing.
It is another one to add to my ever-growing list.
Which will never stop growing.
Exactly. The artist, Bill Kiley, is part of the Wick collective of artists, along with Ludo Wick, DJ Electrohead, Tunç Shakir, and Justin Stander. And that's a Dutch electronic music label.
Tunç Shakir?
Tunç Shakir. Yeah, it's got that little C with the little squiggly underneath it. Yeah. Bill Kiley's other works, other games that he's worked on are Why Am I Dead at Sea, which came out in 2015, Dungeon Hearts in 2013, and Washington's Wig in 2012.
Ooh, that sounds like fun.
These are like the most obscure of the obscure games. These must have been very, very indie titles.
You know, I've been waiting for a good wig simulator.
Well, this is it. This is a historical wig simulator.
Excellent.
I'm sure the future ones might be like Dolly Parton's wig or
Right.
Bette Midler's wig or something.
Yeah.
Eventually you'll wind up to like Trump's wig.
I'd probably not don that one right away, but...
Where wind is your greatest enemy. Anything else you want to tell us about Katana Zero before we move on?
I don't think so. Like I said, I haven't played it, but it just looks tremendous. I mean, I definitely recommend checking it out. I mean, the music for sure. Check out the soundtrack.
Yeah.
It's really tremendous.
That I will definitely do. All right, so my last track, I was going to say track and pick at the same time, so it ended up being trick.
You did it.
My last pick of the day is from a game called Disco Dodgeball Remix, and this is a track called 8-Bit Adventure. This came out on the Switch in 2018, as well as PS4 and Xbox One, composed by Adhesive Wombat, otherwise known as George Shaw. like to finish up strong. That was 8-Bit Adventure. That's what my wife says too, by the way.
Yeah.
From Disco Dodgeball Remix. Came out on the Switch, PS4, and Xbox One in 2018, composed by Adhesive Wombat, otherwise known as George Shaw. Yeah, this one is great. It's just a couple of plucky square channels having a little party with a whole bunch of dubsteppy drum beats and textured synths, and they're just all jamming out together, having a great time. You were talking about some high-level chippy-tuny stuff that I don't know about that. Trying to follow. No, I'm just kidding. We were talking about the harmonizations and how he's just using a simple square wave with really well-timed kind of, I like to call them bespoke note bends. Like every note has its own individual little touch, whether it's a vibrato or going up or going down, or they kind of like all blend into one another, and you're not just listening to what seems like, ColecoVision music or something like that. He really spent some time really fine-tuning the melodies on this track.
Yeah. So there's obviously that main line, that beep, 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 beep. Oh, that's the secondary one. But the main, the lead. Yeah. And that's the song. It's just that. But he expands upon it and builds off of it and goes in all different directions all around that one line. And whereas the song never really diverts in any, it doesn't go in any it's got no progressive elements whatsoever.
Right.
It doesn't.
But he just plays with that same pattern over and over.
Which he does masterfully, just goes all over the place. He stays in one spot, but goes all over the place. If that's... He
goes everywhere within that one spot.
Right, yeah. And it builds and it dies out, and then that main part plays again, and then it comes back, and then it's got harmonizing parts, and then there's a counter melody that comes in there.
Yeah.
Really, really, really cool. And like you said, it's just that basic square sound, and that's the crux of the song, is built all around that. I don't know what he's using. I don't know that tech stuff really. But to me, based on what I do know, that sounds like a Duty Cycle number 2 on an NES on the Square, which is, when I'm fiddling around with it, it's the sound I tend to like the most has the most uses, I think. I really like that sound, and it's such a simple sound, like you said, and he's just he wrote a melody, and then at the end of every couple notes he puts this pitch bend on it that just moves it around in this really cool way. I really like this track, and it on that such a simple concept, it's kind of a long track, but because he does so much with it, it's like the perfect length.
It doesn't get old.
No, not at all.
Exactly. And that's the mark of a really cool track. So the composer, Adhesive Wombat, a.k.a. George Shaw, has been a musician since he was 9 years old, taking piano lessons. And so he's a multi-instrumentalist on live instrumentation. And he said a few years back, a friend of his wanted to start a YouTube channel, and he wanted some outro music for his videos. And he was like, "Hey, George, you know how to make music. Do you want to try some electronic music for my outro?" And he was like, "Well, I've never done electronic music before. I'm going to give it a shot." So he downloaded Fruity Loops or something and started trying to put something together. And I guess the YouTube channel, the guy never ended up actually creating one, but he had so much fun writing electronic music that he was like, "I'm going to keep up with this." And so he discovered SoundCloud, and that he could upload music and get feedback from people. So he just kind of kept at it and became Adhesive Wombat, and so...
Which, by the way, he should have his name legally changed to Adhesive Wombat, because that's just too awesome.
He describes himself as the stickiest marsupial.
Yeah, that's what I would. Stick all the glue down in there.
Yeah. Pouch. So, he's from Raleigh, North Carolina, and he just enjoys making music. I don't think this song was originally intended to be in a video game. He just kind of has it up on his SoundCloud as is. But the creators of Disco Dodgeball decided this would be a good fit, and so they threw it in the game, and so I figured it would be great to share. So the description of Disco Dodgeball reads, "Dodge, deflect, and catch enemy fire as you perform ridiculous aerial stunt shots with your mustachioed unicycle robot, and enjoy the voice of a booming monster truck announcer when you score."
If
That
that's
just
not
sounds
enough,
like
if that's not
goddamn
enough reason to get you to play this game, I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, it seems like you're like in an enclosed area. Almost feels kind of like a multiplayer shoot 'em up arena style. There's places you can go up and down ramps and platforms and moving stuff, and but your object is not to necessarily shoot the other person. It's to find the ball and hold the ball, and then find the other person and beam them
Throw it
in
at
their
them.
mustachioed cubed head.
Yeah.
And that's how you get points. So it looks fun. It looks much more fun probably as a multiplayer online game.
Yeah,
than,
definitely.
Just playing against your robot buddies. But I haven't played it much, or I haven't played it at all actually. And I don't know. I kind of want to check it out, but I might get it for something other than Switch because I can't go online with my Switch. So maybe I'll see if the PS4 has any sort of online presence and check it out that way.
Yeah, looks really fun. I haven't played it yet either, but I think I laughed a little when I first started watching the gameplay. It just looked so ridiculous, but equally as fun.
And there's like disco lights and everything go off whenever you get a point. Like there's a big celebration for it every single time. So it's cool. That about wraps it up for our picks. We were going to talk about maybe some honorable mentions before we get into the end game of the show. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you haven't yet?
Well, we talked about it a bit on the Patreon exclusive episode, but I guess not everyone's probably heard that one. But SteamWorld Heist is one that I actually had a track for that on my picks list of my picks for a while, and then sort of last minute I kind of worked it out. But that soundtrack was done by a group called Steam Powered Giraffe.
Oh, I've heard of them.
Yeah,
they're like
sort
a
of
steampunk band,
they're
right?
like a novelty sort of act where they do full costume, full makeup, full character, and they sort of move like robots. And
yes,
but they do really nice, beautiful vocal stuff. Their songs are great. There's one track in that game that
it's like like the music is like 30s and 40s seem like what the steampunk era would be.
Right. But they do some really beautiful like harmony work, and the lead singer has sort of kind of like a comical sort of sound to his voice.
Like a carnival barker almost.
Yeah, a little bit like that. Yeah, and there are points in the game where you enter these areas like shops and things, bars, saloons, and then there's a band playing like on the stage, and it's Steam Powered Giraffe, like
that's cool.
depicted as like
game characters.
Yeah, and the music will play, and as you go back to your ship, like the music will fade out and then fade back in, sort of like crossfade into the music that's in your ship, and then the music that's playing in the bar.
Nice.
Really cool. I really recommend the game. It is, if you're a fan of Firefly like I am, it is the closest you will ever get to playing a Firefly game. And if you play it for a couple minutes, you'll see that was the biggest inspiration for the game. It's cool. Really, and they really, I think they nailed it as far as they wanted to. I think they really nailed it.
That's really neat.
Yeah. Do you have any on the top of your head?
Yeah, I wanted to play something from. It's a brand new game called My Friend Pedro. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen it. Yeah.
It looks amazing. I haven't gotten a chance to pick it up yet. It literally just came out a couple days before this recording, and the only reason I didn't is because the soundtrack's been uploaded, but because it's like a recording from the game itself, like the quality just wasn't appropriate for a podcast. So I'll probably share it further down the line. But anyways, it seems like this really awesome side-scrolling acrobatic shoot 'em up style game where you're like flipping over enemies and just doing like ballet acrobatic moves and like firing two guns at once.
Yes.
And it looks really, really neat. Like you can like choreograph like combo moves one into another and flip, and the time slows down and you shoot like 8 guys before you land on your feet. So it looks fun. And I want to check it out. It's getting some pretty good reviews. It's getting a lot of hype. It's from Devolver Digital, and anything those guys put out tends to be gold in my book.
It's got that like Beautiful Joe kind of
stylish action.
Yeah, like where it slows down to get the action shots and stuff like that. I really like that. The two pistols.
Yep.
It's really cool.
Yeah, so that's a game that I'm kind of looking forward to playing, which I would recommend for other people to check out as well if you haven't heard of it.
Bastion is a really beautiful sort of like, would you call it top-down? It's like isometric, but I don't know if I would use the term isometric necessarily.
I think it's pretty much isometric.
Yeah.
We did an isometric episode of Pixel Tunes, and I might have even played something from it in
really?
that show.
The soundtrack is great. It's mostly, real instrumentation. There seems to be a very sad feel to that game. You know, a lot of like really tragic music with even like really tragic lyrics. And kind of reminds me a little bit of Secret of Evermore because of the character. He's like a little boy sort of, and he's got to kind of discover what happened to this place.
Right, like the whole world's been pretty much destroyed, and it's up to him to completely rebuild his world. Right. Yeah, there's a big sense of loneliness at the beginning, and I think that might lift as you go because you're building more and more of the world, and more people appear and stuff like that. So that loneliness goes away.
Like Terranigma, sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, you start with nothing and you're building towards everything.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Let's see, I dug out my Switch, so I'm going to look through my...
is that what that noise of that shovel was?
Extermination Force. We talked about that on Embassy exclusive, but if you're not a Patreon subscriber, it's a fantastic run and gun game. So if you can imagine Contra or like Gunstar Heroes with giant screen-filling bosses one after another, that's pretty much my Extermination Force. You have to memorize the patterns, shoot the gold objects, and then you get a melee weapon to smash the robots' faces in once you've shot them enough time with your guns. And then you earn money to get power-ups to fight more bosses, and you can go back to bosses you've already beaten in order to get extra funds if you want. But that's a really fun game. I've been playing that quite a bit. I'm up to, I think, the third boss at this point. But there's no stages, no platforming. It's literally just boss.
The only thing better than a good boss battle is a giant boss battle.
Yes.
And what is better than just a succession of those, just one after the other? It looks like a lot of fun. Again, I haven't played it, but from the video we watched, that looks like a lot of fun, especially 2-player.
Yeah, definitely. What else have I been playing? Let's say Tabletop World Tour, or Tabletop Racing World Tour, is like an arcade racer where your cars are like super like Micro Machine tiny, but it's in third person, so it's not like Micro Machines or The Last Penelope where you're looking down on the table. It's like you're actually small, and it's kind of like a kart racer. It's a cheap little game, but the graphics are actually really good. Worth a shot.
It's hard to go wrong with most of these little games.
Yep.
Another one is, have you heard of Typo Man?
I have not.
I don't know many people have. I've never really heard anyone mention it, but it was a game that I had put on my wish list a while back, and I finally bought it, and I beat it in like 5 hours. The hero is literally the word hero. So the hero is like the O is his head, the H is his legs. He gets the R for an arm. Like it's sounds really silly, but it's like a puzzle platformer, and the story of the game, basically it's positivity versus negativity.
Interesting.
And like it's this dark world created from negativity.
Okay.
So like the word hate, if the word hate is spelled out, it creates this demon that comes to life, and you have to figure out how to transform the word hate into the word love. And then the word love like will become a part of the puzzle and become part of the environment, and you have to move the letters around, and there's different ways to interact with the environment, to flip words. Like you have to spell the word up to go up to, or to spell the word on to turn on an elevator. And then like in the midst of that, they actually work the narrative into it, which is really, really creative. I've never really heard or seen anything like it before.
That's really cool.
It is really cool.
Yeah, I definitely got to check that one out.
Yeah, it's very short, but it's very worth the I don't remember what it costs now, but it's not an expensive game. Yeah. Definitely check that one out.
Cool. Yeah. All right, so let's wrap things up. As always, I'd like to thank Indira for the art and Trevin Hughes, a.k.a. Dread, for the podcast theme song. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/The VGMbassy, or on Twitter at The VGMbassy, and Instagram at The VGMbassy. And I'd like to thank our Patreon patrons at the Taurus level: Shoryu Kenny, Cameron Childs, and Michael Bridgewater from the Forever Sound Version podcast. Our VG emissaries: Chris Murray, Chris Myers, Donovan Orofino, Ben the Dyad Dishman, John Jekyll, Chris Steenerson, and Jordan Werme from the Table to Stage podcast. Our audio attaché members: Cameron Werme. Thanks for coming on my show, Cam.
You got it, buddy.
Carly Doe from the Heroes 3 podcast, and Scott McElhone. And as always, our VG ambassador, the patron saint of VGM podcasts, Alex, the messenger. Cam, thank you so much for hanging out with me. This was fun.
As always, yes.
A lot about some games I haven't played yet.
Yeah.
Listen to some cool tunes.
I was excited going into this one because I knew we had such a good collection of music. It was a really good playlist. I really enjoyed the music in this episode.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we've got a couple more ideas for shows kicking around, so I'm sure you'll be back sooner than later. Plus, that reminds me, we've got Retro World Expo coming up in September. So I have applied for the VGM panel. We've done it the past 2 years. Cam has been on the panel for the past 2 years. We've had a blast. Yep. And hopefully we'll get approved. So I will keep you guys updated
Here's hoping.
Via Discord, on the podcast, via Facebook as well. Robin Purnell will be coming back again to do the panel with us.
Always a blast.
If it all goes down correctly. So keep your ear to the ground for that. And in the meantime, we'll be back in another 2 weeks with another great VGMbassy. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.
Take care.